Hello and welcome to Plant Crafted Pantry. Today we are making gluten-free vegan bagels and cream cheese. To make the bagels, I'm starting out with 3.5 cups of warm water, and I'm adding 2 tablespoons of active dry yeast and 2 tablespoons of sugar. Mixing that up and setting it aside. Next, I'm adding 7 cups of gluten-free all-purpose flour to a large bowl, along with 1/4 cup of psyllium husk powder, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Then mixing all of those dry ingredients together. Now that the yeast mixture has been sitting for about 10 minutes and is nice and foamy, we'll pour that into the dry ingredients, and we'll also add 1/4 cup of olive oil. Now I'm starting to mix it up using a spoon. And then when it gets harder to stir, I'll switch to my hands to continue mixing. I did need to add a couple of extra tablespoons of water to this batch to get everything combined, and it should form a soft, slightly wet dough. Now that everything is fully combined, I'm going to cover the bowl with a damp towel and set this in a warm place to rise for about an hour. I'm using my dehydrator set at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that the dough has risen, we will shape the bagels. This batch makes 12 bagels, so I started by dividing the dough into quarters and then dividing each quarter into 3 pieces. Now take each dough ball and form it into a bagel shape. You'll start off by forming a flattened ball and then poke a hole in the middle, and I'm spinning it on my finger to make the hole a little bit bigger. And then I'm setting these on individual pieces of parchment paper on the racks for my dehydrator. You could also place these on sheet pans and let them rise in your oven or another warm place. Now I'm spraying the tops with a little bit of oil to keep them from drying out. And then we'll place those back in the dehydrator for a second rise for about an hour. Now I have a pot of water at a slow boil on the stove, and I'm dropping in 3 of the risen bagels at a time. The individual pieces of parchment paper help with this step, and then pulling out the paper with some tongs. We will boil the bagels on each side for 30 seconds. I'm using a slotted spoon to turn them over. And then after the next 30 seconds, I'll use the same slotted spoon to turn them back over right side up onto a baking sheet with a silpat. And then these are ready to go in the oven at 450 degrees for about 25 minutes or until they're slightly browned. I did rotate the pans about halfway through the baking time. And here's what they look like after they've come out of the oven. We'll let these cool completely. And now we are moving on to our vegan cream cheese. So here I'm placing a coffee filter in the bottom of my tofu press and adding a package of silken tofu. Then I'm adding another coffee filter on top and closing the press. I'm just using the coffee filters here because the silken tofu will go through the holes at the bottom of my tofu press without it. So we'll set that aside to press. And then I'm taking 1/2 cup of raw cashews and covering them with boiling water. And we'll let both of these things sit for about 20 minutes. Now I drained the cashews and I'm adding those into my blender cup. And here's the tofu now that it's been pressed. I drained off the liquid and I'm just using the coffee filter to pull it out of the tofu press. Adding the tofu in with the cashews, and then adding 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and 1 tablespoon of, this is whey from some vegan yogurt experiments, but you could also just use plant milk or yogurt. Now blending that up. Try to get it to blend without adding any more liquid. You may need to shake or stir it to get it blended up smoothly. Then I poured it into a container, put the lid on, and put it in the refrigerator to set and thicken up. Now that the bagels are completely cool, I am slicing them all in half and putting them in containers. Since I'm making a large batch, I'll put this container of them in the freezer until I'm ready to use them. And here is the cream cheese now that it has firmed up a little bit. It's still a fairly soft cream cheese, but it tastes good just spread on a bagel, which is better than a lot of the store-bought versions out there. So here is a bagel that I toasted up and just spreading some of the cream cheese on top. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye.